Have you heard about the two major first-time homebuyer programs currently working their way through Congress? The $15,000 tax credit is known as the First-Time Homebuyer Act of 2021 we chatted about last week. And the $25,000 First-Time Homebuyer Grant is known as the Down Payment Towards Equity Act of 2021 we're talking about in this video. I mean, $25,000 to buy a house. That's a lot of money that could help a lot of people. The only question is, will one of those people be you? If you're new here, thank you for joining in and welcome to the Real Estate Pulse Show. Real Estate Pulse is your weekly source for honest and unbiased real estate information about the forces shaping the U.S. housing market you can use today. My name is Andrew Finney and I'm an active real estate agent in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm in the trenches with home buyers and home sellers every single day, helping them navigate their real estate journey. If you're buying or selling a house, let's get in touch. Yes, I'm accepting new clients. Now, let's get to it. There are a couple of current resources that shed light on the possible Down Payment Toward Equity Act of 2021 and how it might work. If you want to check them out, they are linked in the description of this video. The first is a 3-page summary version of the Down Payment Toward Equity Act from the National Council of State Housing Agencies, aka the NCSHA. The second is the 17-page discussion draft from the U.S. House Committee on Financial Services. To keep it simple here, we'll use the summary version. The intended purpose of the Down Payment Toward Equity Act of 2021 is to provide a grant program for states to use for down payment assistance to help first-generation homebuyers. As we move forward, we'll go a bit deeper into what some of these terms mean and some of the reasons behind them. Currently, there is no specific amount of funding mentioned since this is still a discussion draft and not approved yet. Now, it's pretty interesting to note that if this program passes as it's written in the discussion draft, it could be available from fiscal years 2021 to 2030. So if this thing passes, it looks like it's going to be with us for a little bit of time. If enacted, this program on the federal level would be administered under the jurisdiction of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is commonly referred to as HUD. When the funding is set for this program, the HUD must use at least 5% of the funds to support housing counseling services. We'll talk about what housing counseling activities and services mean in a minute. On the state level, any state receiving grants under this act must administer the funds through its state housing financing agency, also known as HFA, or another state housing agency the Treasury considers appropriate. For any state to be eligible to receive funds under this act, the state's HFA or another state housing agency must have adopted a plan for affirmatively further fair housing that the Treasury deems compliant with HUD's 2015 Affirmatively Further Fair Housing Rule. By the way, HUD's 2015 Affirmatively Further Fair Housing Rule is 101 pages long, and it's available from the Federal Register if you'd like to check it out. We'll circle back on this and why it's important in a moment. The funds for this program will be appropriated each fiscal year and allocated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD for short. Specifically, the HUD will administer funds based upon a grant formula that considers each state's population, median area home prices, and racial disparities in home ownership. Now, I know that depending on your point of view, this may or may not be a sticking point for you. All the same, I'm asking you to please be respectful of each other and one another's views in the comment section. Thank you. The HUD would also reallocate any unused funding at the end of each fiscal year to states that have demonstrated the capacity to use the money and that the Treasury determines are meeting the program's goals. For eligible homebuyers, the funds under this possible bill can be used as down payment assistance, closing cost assistance, or even payments to reduce your mortgage interest rate. On top of that, in the current form of the discussion draft, a homebuyer could stack this program with other assistance programs they might be receiving from other federal, state, and local programs and private and nonprofit sources. So you might be wondering who can qualify and what that looks like. From the summary of the discussion draft, we can see an eligible recipient must be a first-time homebuyer who meets the income requirements and qualifies what the Act terms as a first-generation home buyer. For reference, a first-time home buyer is considered anyone who has not owned a home in the prior 3 years. For the income limits, a home buyer must have an annual income up or below 120% of the area median income, or AMI for short. If you're wondering what your AMI is where you live, you can use the AMI Lookup tool courtesy of Fannie Mae. To make it easy for you, you'll find it linked in the description of this video. To bring the numbers to life, let's do a quick example for Las Vegas, Nevada, where I live and work. The Las Vegas area median income is $70,800. So if a buyer can have up to 120% of the area median income, we can quickly do the math by multiplying 70,800 times 1.2, and that gives us $84,960 as the current max income for this program in the Las Vegas, Nevada area. To calculate the max area median income where you live, simply multiply the area median income by 1.2, and there you go. Yep, it's that easy. If you live in a high-cost area, like let's say San Francisco and New York City, a home buyer can have up to 180% of the area's median income. So you'd multiply your AMI by 1.8 to get the maximum income limit for this program. To find out if you live in a high-cost area, I'll put the link in the description of this video. So that brings up the next qualifying point. What in the world is a first-generation home buyer? For the purpose of this act, a first-generation home buyer is defined as any individual whose parents or guardians have never owned their own home during the home buyer's lifetime, or previously owned a home during the home buyer's lifetime but lost the house to foreclosure, short sale, or a deed in lieu of foreclosure and do not currently own a home. The caveat here is that any person that lived in foster care also qualifies as a first-generation homebuyer. It's important to note what we just talked about here. If your parents have not owned a home during your lifetime, let's say you're 25 or 30, and they have not owned a home during your lifetime, you could possibly be considered a first-generation homebuyer as this is currently defined. At this point, you could be thinking there is a lot to know about buying a house, and to be honest, you'd be absolutely right. To help you get better prepared, I'll link a free home buying process infographic in the description of this video to help get you started. Now, if you're wondering about the money and how much money you could get, we're getting to that now. Qualified homebuyers may receive up to $20,000 in assistance or $25,000 in assistance if the homebuyer qualifies as what's called a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. For the purpose of this act, a socially disadvantaged individual is defined as those that have been subject to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of the identity as a member of a group without regard to the individual qualities. And an economically disadvantaged individual is one who meets the bill's income requirements we went over a few moments ago. It's worth noting that you're still going to have to be able to qualify to buy a home to be able to receive funds from this program if it passes. This bill does have an automatic presumption that if anyone identifies as Black, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American, or any combination thereof, they will be considered to meet this definition. For any person that does not identify as such, they will have to prove by a preponderance of evidence they are socially disadvantaged. Now, again, depending on someone's point of view, the definition of a socially and economically disadvantaged individual may or may not seem offensive. But here's the deal. There's excellent reasons for why that's the case and why it's important. Unfortunately, in the history of the United States, mortgage and housing discrimination through redlining, racial segregation enforced by Jim Crow laws were legal until the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was passed. If you really want to know why a housing program like this is needed to help people, I'll put the links in the description of this video to a few different sources. One of them being the Independent Lens by PBS series that talks about the impacts of redlining. The next is the Wikipedia's housing discrimination history in the United States, and a link to a podcast called Stuff You Should Know that's pretty cool, pretty quick listen, about 35-40 minutes, and you'll learn a lot more about housing discrimination in the United States. So that brings us to the question of the day. I'm curious, now that you know more about how this program is shaping up and what it sounds like from the discussion draft, if this bill passes, what do you think about the possible $25,000 down payment assistance grant as it's currently written? Please share your honest thoughts with us in the comment section below, and please be respectful and kind to others. Thank you. Okay, so we mentioned a moment ago that a buyer is going to actually have to qualify like any other buyer out there, and they're going to have to go through the mortgage pre-application process to ensure they can get approved for a home loan. But it does bring up what kind of home loans would be working in conjunction with this program. So what are those loan types that will be available with this program? Well, an eligible home buyer will be able to use any common home loan type such as a conventional loan, VA loan, FHA loan, or a USDA loan that meet the definition of a qualified mortgage. Now, you might remember a moment ago we were talking about home counseling programs are required, and as part of this program, home buyers are required to complete a home purchase counseling program provided through a HUD-approved housing agency. Now, it is absolutely essential to know this and to keep it in the back of your mind to see how this plays out moving forward if this bill passes. Repayment terms do apply if a home buyer received assistance under this act and occupies their home for less than 1 year after the purchase. The way it looks so far from the discussion draft, the way that this would work is if a buyer sells a house in less than a year after purchase, the full amount they received will need to be paid back. For every year thereafter, 20% of the amount received will be forgiven over a 5-year period. After living in the house for 5 years, which, I mean, if you bought it, hopefully you're happy with your home for at least 5 years, the full amount that you receive from this act is entirely forgiven. Now, that being said, there's also a key provision in here that actually benefits a home buyer if for any reason they sold their home within that 5-year period and the realized gain on the sale is less than the amount they are required to pay, the penalty fee would be waived. On a side note, if you're getting value out of this video, would you let me know by tapping the thumbs up, please? Thank you. To get more videos like this one, please remember to subscribe and to tap the bell icon to get notified of the next video. Thank you so much. Now let's get back to it. All right, now it's time for the subscriber shout out. This week, I'm giving kudos and positive vibes to our Home Tribe teammate, Icy Knox 46. Icy Knox watched the 19 tips to save new homeowners money. And Icy Knox said, "This is exactly what I was looking for, stuff that I feel like my parents just knew. But I was too busy playing the video games." I want to tell you, Icy Knox, that's cool, and I'm glad that you found that video, and I'm stoked this video hit home for you. And thank you for being part of our Home Tribe team, Icy Knox 46. If you want to join the Home Tribe team too, please click in the link in the description below. If you're ready to watch the video that helped Icy Knox, I'll pop up the card somewhere up here so you can check it out next. Now, if you're ready to go deeper into learning how to buy a home of your own, then go ahead and click here on how not to get screwed buying a house, or click here to learn the 11 biggest first-time homebuyer mistakes. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.